everyone, welcome back to my channel. Now before we start, you've probably noticed the Harry Potter poster and the Hobbit poster in the background, as well as my vision board. Now, the reason I've put those two up is one, they are some of my favourite series, but apart from that is, my god, see that yellow there? See that yellow there? It looks disgusting on camera. It looks disgusting in person, but it looks disgusting on camera too. So I was like, it's a book channel, we can cover that shit up with, you know, posters of some of my favourite things. Okay, so this video is going to be what I think was the best book of 2016. I enjoyed it a lot. It came out in October, and that book is Jodi Picoult's Small Great Things. Now, you will notice that the spine isn't broken. No one try to read me for that, okay? Because I've seen some people complain about other booktubers who, you know, don't have broken spines on their books, and it seems like everyone buys books just for the sake of buying books and doesn't actually read them. I got an advanced copy of this in September, so a month before it came out, so that's what I read. So I haven't actually read this copy that I own because I had just finished reading the other one. Anyway, the story focuses on a black nurse, Ruth Jefferson, who is required to look after a newborn baby from Turk Bauer and his wife, and it's revealed that Turk is a skinhead and says, I don't want that black woman touching my baby. And then there is, you know, an event that happens where Ruth is left with an ultimatum where she's left alone with the baby stops breathing, and she has to make a decision of whether she respects the wishes of the family and doesn't touch the baby, or she moves to save the baby's life. She ends up moving to save the baby's life. The baby dies anyway, and then as a result she gets put on trial for negligence. And I don't want to say stereotypical, but a very ordinary white woman who isn't racist, isn't, you know, that opposite end of the spectrum, being Turk and, you know, being a skinhead, but she's the public defender for Ruth. So it follows her story, the trial, and through doing that looks at a lot of racial issues in the US that I wasn't aware of because, you know, I live in Australia. But I think that anyone who reads this can get an understanding of what racism is, what racism feels like. The book's told from multiple first-person narrators, so it follows Turk's perspective, it follows Ruth's perspective, and it follows Kennedy's perspective. Now, a lot of people will argue, how can a white woman, being Jodi, how can a white woman there, write as a black character? Like, what gives her the right to write a black character? And through listening to her interviews, through going and seeing her and everything like that, hearing about the research, the intense research that she did for that book, and having, you know, people of colour proofreading as she was writing it, going to, you know, workshops to learn about racial issues and hear racist stories, interviewing skinheads as well as people of colour, well, ex-skinheads as well as people of colour. You know, she put in a lot of research in the book, and she has said herself the point of the book isn't to tell people of colour what their lives are like, because that's not her point. The point of the book is to tell people who aren't a person of colour what's happening, and to make them reflect on themselves and say, hey, that thing that I don't think is racist is actually racist. It's not, you know, this extreme example of Turk, but it's still like a small amount of prejudice that we're so unaware of because we've been so conditioned to believe in it. Now, that being said, I actually gave this 5 out of 5 stars. I thought it was amazing. In Australia, I made a comment about that too, because in Australia there are definitely some racial issues between, you know, the stereotypical white Australian and Aboriginal people, being the first people of the nation. I'm not going to delve too much into this because I know it will be controversial. I'm actually Aboriginal, part Aboriginal. I know you probably look at me, look at my skin, think, you know, how can you be Aboriginal, you're so white. I have an Aboriginal history. Now, it was very interesting reading this book for me and reflecting and saying, you know, I've experienced that type of racism to an extent. And again, the reason it's to an extent is because my skin colour is white. But then on the flip side, I have also, been that racist person. And again, not intentionally racist, but being that racist person who, will veer out of the way or will stereotype someone, or, those little microaggression type things that we are so unaware of because, it's so much easier to look at, for example, the KKK and say, that's a racist, or to look at, Donald Trump and say, that's a racist, or look at Pauline Hanson in Australia and say, that's a racist. But we can't look at ourselves and say the same thing. Now, all that being said, I highly recommend it. I personally have compared this to the modern day To Kill a Mockingbird. I think it has just as much potential to achieve what that story achieved. The fact that To Kill a Mockingbird was written decades ago, and this was written in 2016, and we're still questioning these issues, that's not okay. Now, following on from that, I actually want to give a small shout out to Jodi because she's been such a great support of mine, so I want to say thank you to her, and thank you to Alan and Unwin for giving me an advanced copy, or, well, for letting me win an advanced copy. And yeah, so have you read any of Jodi's books? Because, she likes to write about controversial moral dilemmas, and I think they're amazing. She's one of my favourite authors. So let me know if you've read any of her books, especially if you've read Not Leaving Time, Small Great Things, and let me know your thoughts on it. Until then, take care, and happy reading!